right, Alyssa, we're going to do something that we have been doing these last few weeks, and it just feels good, right? We're going to start the news.
On a high note.
On a high note. So take a listen to this.
Good afternoon. I'm quite honored to have been chosen as this year's White Coat ceremony speaker.
What you just heard was from a University of Michigan medical student walkout of their white coat ceremony to protest the speaker, which was an anti-abortion speaker. This happened on Sunday night at the University of Michigan Med School. White coat ceremony, if you're familiar, is a huge deal for newly minted doctors, newly or about to be minted doctors. Incoming medical students recited their oaths, received their white coats, and then walked right out. The keynote speaker was Dr. Kristen Collier. I don't know. She can't bother with my rights. I can't bother with her name.
100%.
She is a University of Michigan faculty member and a primary care physician who is very open about being anti-abortion. And they walked out of this extremely important moment that many of them had been working their entire lives for. And my God, the future looks bright with these doctors.
It does look bright, but what is going on at the University of Michigan this week?
I don't know.
Jesus. The worst of the Big Ten, can we just say?
Ooh, that's spicy. People, you know what? University of Michigan is a great school. It is such a good school.
Not this week.
Well, no, it's such a good school. I know a lot of people who went there and they're like, oh, super brilliant and cool. Don't love their football team because, obviously. But yeah, it is weird that it has become this little kind of embarrassing nexus.
Yeah. Avoidable embarrassment this week.
Somebody from the University of Michigan do something cool ASAP.
Yeah.
Besides these white coat ceremony doctors.
They were awesome.
They did do
Good
something
for them.
cool.
And they shouldn't have had to. It was their moment. And that's how they had to use their moment.
They shouldn't have had to. But I really am. It is a really cool moment to watch them protest. It kind of reminded me of how I felt when University of Notre Dame students walked out on Mike Pence at their commencement.
Yes, and that lovely woman, Paxton, who used her graduation speech to talk about women's rights to abortion last commencement season.
In Texas.
In Texas.
Brave. Also, we did have another bright note that we wanted to talk about, right?
What's the other bright note?
So there
yes, we did. I just remembered.
Do you want to talk about our
No,
new
my
pal,
throat is
Olivia?
a little hoarse. I'll chime in.
You're a little hoarse. I just pictured like a pony when you said my throat is a little hoarse because my brain is very slow today. There is a certain congressman from the state of Florida who is really seems every time he opens his mouth, I'm like, do you really want to keep flying this close to the sun?
Vying for America's worst congressman.
Yeah, and one of Congress's dumbest motherfuckers.
Yes.
Matt Gaetz. It's a tight competition, by the way.
It is, but he's been keeping the lead.
Yeah, consistently in the top 10 stupidest motherfuckers in Congress. He made some really, I'm not even going to get into it, but he made some really, really mean-spirited and shitty comments about a 19-year-old. He really needs to stay away from teens altogether. Just
entirely.
The 19-year-old is a woman named Olivia Julianna, and rather than just, taking his shame and attempted shaming and abuse, she jujitsu'd that into raising money for her group Gen Z for Change, and she has raised, how much is it now?
$168,000 so far.
Off of Matt Gaetz running his mouth about her looks. She's raised $168,000. Okay, so here is something that I really think that people who are older millennials and Gen Xers need to understand about Gen Z. And I'm only saying this as an interested observer. I love generational dynamics. You cannot hurt Gen Z. No. They have been on Instagram since they were like 8.
They rise up every time.
They have been hurt in every possible way. They have been exposed to everything possible. And they are now, you cannot hurt them by insulting them. They're terrifying. One of our producers is a member of Gen Z, and I'm going to just say they are a little scary.
Yeah.
In an incredible way. An incredible way. So Gen Z, you can't hurt them. You cannot hurt them. And so don't try, because what they're going to do is take the dumb shit that you say and raise money off of the thing that you stand against. So, Matt Gaetz, thank you for helping raise $168,000.
So much money.
For Gen Z for change. And I doubt that he will learn his lesson. But, maybe if he doesn't, more money will be raised.
Yes, and follow Olivia Julianna on Twitter and social media because she is incredible.
Yeah, you cannot hurt her.
You cannot hurt her.
She is not.
And she is not scared.
She is 100% not scared. And I want Olivia Julianna to not come after me because she would absolutely defeat me. Okay, now let's get into some stuff that's a little bit less uplifting. So this is something that came up this week in our Hysteria chat. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted you to talk about this, Alyssa, because it seems like something that has really kind of like been, we've talked about this a little, but this is something that's kind of been stuck in your craw. So Roe v. Wade being overturned looks as though it now may galvanize people to safeguard gay marriage. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes. So this week, the House called for its vote on the Respect for Marriage Act, and 47 Republicans voted yes. This would safeguard interracial marriages and same-sex marriage. Now, let me be clear. That's fucking great. That is good. I am happy about that. But it does make you stop for a minute and be like, why does everyone hate women so much? Why does everybody hate people who can get pregnant so much? Why is this so? It's like it shouldn't. They've set it up. I feel like they want us to feel this way. Like, haha, look what we're doing. And it is it's hard. And it really, I don't know. It really got under my skin. And it's like Republican, like, what do they even believe in? Like, either you hate people or you believe people have rights. Do you know what I mean? They're really parsing the fact that women and people who can get pregnant shouldn't have rights to live the lives that they want to live. That's what that says to me. And it felt very specific and very targeted, even though, like I said, I'm very glad that it is safeguarding the rights of people to marry who they want. That is wonderful, and we can't live in a world where that doesn't exist. But women and having autonomy over their bodies should also fucking be a no-brainer, in my opinion.
I think that you are right, and you're talking about something that has made me a little bit uncomfortable about this conversation too, because it feels like a deliberate attempt to create a schism.
Yes.
And it feels as though, and that schism, what Republicans are counting on is that there will be enough people who care about LGBTQ marriage equality, but do not care about reproductive justice. Mm-hmm. And I want to believe that there are not very many people who will, not once the gay marriage thing is codified. I want to believe that those people will also say, like, but wait a minute, what about women? What about reproductive justice? What about people who can get pregnant? Right. But I also know that as a political strategy, it is effective because there are people who care about safeguarding gay marriage, but not about bodily autonomy and reproductive justice. And that is it's such a bummer.
It's a bummer. It's a bummer, and it's unfair. And there's also something just super, this is basic, but it feels, I was just thinking about Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell is married to a woman who was born in Taiwan. And so, of course, he's like, of course, I should be able to do this. So, of course, everybody should be able to do it. Well, actually, that's weird. That's actually not how Republicans think. But this is why they come out and support. And the thing that is so upsetting about it is that if any of these people who have voted against abortion needed to get an abortion for someone they were close to, they would know how to do it. They're just robbing it from the people who do not have that level of access and privilege. And so that's also why I think it's just so fucked up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really this whole country, it feels, is kind of limping into its twilight. And it's running on schisms. It's running on these like breaks between people who are willing to fight against one type of injustice, but not all types of injustice.
Right.
And I feel like, when it comes to fighting injustice, it's like you got to be all in, or you're not really in it against injustice at all. Like,
right.
and I mean, this is very. I mean, what we're talking about is intersectionality that is encompassing of sexual identification and marriage equality and reproductive justice, and like it's a type of political intersectionality that I feel as though people who care about reproductive justice also care about marriage equality, but people who care about marriage equality don't necessarily care about reproductive justice, right. And that sucks. That sucks. Okay. Let's see. Oh, masks. They're back. Did you throw yours away? Did you throw yours away?
No, I've still got mine.
Yeah, I still have a couple packages of the little KN95s.
I ordered some new ones today.
You can get them in cool colors and like.
I ordered pink.
We have different colors, and I had found a pink package of them. They're
peppy.
If you gotta wear a mask. Masks are back here in Los Angeles. The talk is that on Friday, because we're in a high transmission zone, indoor mask mandates will probably be back. The Beverly Hills City Council just said that they're not going to enforce a mask mandate, which, whatever. I've been wearing a mask just because I have an infant.
Right.
And she has her vaccine, but I don't want her to get sick, and I don't want to get sick, and I don't want my husband to get sick. And, I've been wearing one inside. It's not that huge of a deal. We went to a comedy show the other week, and it was fully masked. Like the comedian that we saw, Tim Heidecker, was not masked, who, by the way, is amazing, hilarious. Tim was not masked, and his band was not masked, but all the audience wasn't. It was fine. It was right. Like, all things being equal, I would have preferred to not have to wear a mask, but it wasn't.
Wearing a mask is not comfortable, and it's not awesome, but it's also not the end of the fucking world.
Yeah, it's not that big of a deal. But it is a bummer that we're backsliding in terms of transmission. I just wonder how many times are we just going to do this forever? Or
I mean, I don't know, girl. It's so much. And this is only the middle of the summer. What happens when it gets cold out again?
Although there's a part of me that thinks maybe in places where it's really hot, people are gathering indoors more in the summer. And so that's kind of becoming a little bit more of a like...
Oh, that's interesting.
A mini cold and flu season.
Right.
It's 100 degrees in Portland this week. Portland!
It was 102 here last weekend.
That's
so hot.
Too hot. It should not be hotter outside than it is inside your body.
But to your point, that is a very good point, because I was inside almost the entire time.
Yeah. It's dangerous times out there. Let's see. Do we have anything else that we want to talk about news-wise?
No, I think that's good.
I don't know.
Said our piece.
JD Vance.
Oh, fuck that guy.
Yeah, that guy's an idiot. JD Vance is an idiot. And what else? Yeah, I think that we can skip the other thing, the conservative "what is a woman" talking point, which is just tedious at this point.
Fuck them.
Well, fuck them. We'll probably end up doing a longer conversation about that. But let's take a quick break. When we come back, an interview with two filmmakers who have made a film out of one of... Have you ever seen Gabby Giffords?
I have.
I saw her lead the Pledge of Allegiance at an Emily's List event several years back. She's incredible. So the two people we talked to this week made a film about Gabby Giffords, and you're going to want to see the movie. You're going to want to hear our interview with them. Stick around. We'll be right back. Alyssa, have you ever watched a preview for a film and cried during the preview?
Yes.
Same. Same. And speaking of, these guests that we have today are behind the latest preview that has made me cry. And this isn't something I do like all the time.
No, this is not your MO.
No, crying during movie previews, not my MO. Crying during Coco, Disney's Coco, absolutely
fair.
my MO. But a preview. This is a movie that the preview got me. Okay, super excited to welcome our guest today. These Oscar-nominated documentary filmmakers have made films about iconic subjects like Julia Child, RBG, Pauli Murray, and now Gabby Giffords. Their latest doc, Gabby Giffords Won't Back Down, dives into the ex-congresswoman's life and career from her rise as a future star of the Democratic Party to the tragic mass shooting that nearly took her life, to her miraculous recovery and dedication to activism. BetsyWest and Julie Cohen, welcome to Hysteria.
Great to be here.
It's so good to see you. Betsy, I'm going to start with you. How did this film come to be? Where did the idea come from? And how did it go from idea to execution? And what was it like getting to know Gabby's story over the process of making the film?
Well, getting to know her story was pretty amazing. And I just want to say, I hope you guys weren't totally crying because it's a super sad story. It's an amazing comeback story and a love story. And we kind of really took to Gabby Giffords immediately when we were introduced to her a couple of years ago by a producer who had met Gabby and her husband, Mark Kelly, and thought, wow, they'd make a great documentary. So this producer, Lisa Erspamer, reached out to us out of the blue and said, would you like to have a Zoom call with Gabby Giffords? And this was at the beginning of the pandemic, so we weren't really that used to meeting people on Zoom. We were like, how's this going to work? As we had heard that Gabby had aphasia, the language disability, and we thought, how's this going to work? But I would say that within about 30 seconds of this Zoom call, Julie and I were completely convinced that this was an extraordinary person and an amazing communicator, and that we should really be telling her story.
Yeah, so Gabby, the Zoom call starts and she takes her foot and lifts it up to the camera of the Zoom to let us see that she's wearing RBG socks. And it only got better from there, frankly. A story that we had gone into worrying about the sadness, what we weren't expecting was the lightness, the humor, and the music, because Gabby loves to sing and did it a lot. So our film is yes, there's a lot of tragedy, but it's also kind of a romance, a comedy, and a musical.
Julie, keying off what you just said, how did you guys approach such a vulnerable story? What care did you take to make sure everyone involved wasn't simply reliving trauma?
Yeah, it's a really good question. We didn't want to make the filmmaking a traumatic process for our subjects, for our audience, or for ourselves, even though obviously this is a story that sort of is born from, the pretty horrible trauma of Gabby having survived a mass shooting. And I think our main technique that way was really just to connect with Gabby as a person first. We actually didn't get into talking about the, horrible events of January 2011 with her or with her husband or family members until we were way more than halfway through the filming process. We did months of filming with them in their life now that was all about kind of the verite doc stuff before we even sort of got into the subject. By the time that we talked to this couple about the most painful story of their lives, we had known them and were honestly kind of friends with them for, close to a year at that point.
Yeah. And just to jump in, I mean, this is something that they've obviously dealt with. And it was kind of amazing to see their attitude about the shooting. Gabby doesn't really remember it. She knows the consequences full well. Right. Certainly this was the worst day of Mark Kelly's life, but, he told the story in a very straightforward way. We also made the decision in the film to not lead with that. I mean, this was not our opening gambit. I mean, the film is about Gabby Giffords' extraordinary comeback. And, Mark Kelly had videotaped a lot of Gabby's recovery in the hospital from the early days. And that's an extraordinary look into what it takes to recover from this kind of an injury to the brain. And we made the decision to lead with that and to deal with the shooting a little bit later on in the film.
So Betsy, you mentioned that it's sort of also a romance, and in RBG, there's a romance in that movie as well. It seems like your subjects all have very supportive partners. What was it like? I know when I was watching my screener, I would like pause and go like hug my husband because I was like, "Oh, you're so great." What was it like watching Gabby and Mark interact?
Yeah, I mean, you're sensing a theme here. Absolutely. I mean, the cool thing is that we were seeing them in person and following them and looking at this extraordinary marriage in action, which is full of a lot of love, a lot of dedication, and a lot of humor. They just have a good time with each other. They tease each other. It's fun to be with them. I think that's true of any couple that is, a good couple and has a good marriage. It's just like other people like being around them, and we certainly enjoyed that. Mark Kelly just supported his wife from the very beginning, from the moment that it became obvious that she was going to survive this horrific shooting. He took on the role of caretaker, setting the rules and making sure that Gabby had the best opportunity to recover. And, not a lot of men take on the caregiver role. In fact, he actually left his high-powered job as an astronaut about 5 or 6 months after Gabby's accident in order to dedicate himself, because I think he had such faith that Gabby was a fighter and was going to push through and was going to make it. But that's a beautiful story. And then we love the fact that the tables turned again, and that Gabby has wound up supporting Mark as he has gone into politics, in a way, taken her place, and she is his biggest advisor in how to have a political career. So this is a marriage of equals that's really beautiful to behold.
Julie, during shooting, very tragic but not surprising, there was so much gun violence that happened while you were making the movie and as it's been released. How did you all react to that, and has making the doc influenced your hope for meaningful gun legislation?
Well, I mean, first of all, I have to say that unfortunately in this country, nothing that unfolded during the time that we were filming or the time of the release of the film in terms of like sort of horrific episodes of gun violence, particularly, gun violence continues in this country on a daily basis. The mass shootings that are kind of the modern day equivalent to what Gabby went through, that's something that happens in this country. So there was no 2-year period that was going to go with making and releasing this film where that wasn't going to happen. We knew it was going to happen. I think we maybe braced ourselves for a post-traumatic reaction from Gabby that was often not exactly what we saw. I mean, I will say, the most notable reactions from Gabby have to do with incidences, like so many of us, where children are involved, where you could just feel her pain, not only as someone who survived something like this herself, but also as someone who's fighting for change and has been frustrated when things don't change. Like, I think it maybe hits pretty hard when a new episode happens and you're like, you have the sort of Oscar Schindler, like, I could have done more reaction, even though this is a person who's doing so much. I think... Look, I mean, this was an issue for us as filmmakers, but like more, we're citizens of this country. So like, it's not like we wouldn't have been upset when, particularly some of the horrible things that have unfolded over the past couple months in Uvalde, Texas, and in Buffalo. Like, I don't think it was because we were working on this film that those things felt so horrible.
Mm-hmm. So I want to pivot to something a little bit more upbeat. Betsy, the musical aspect of this film. So Gabby loves singing. Can you explain a little bit about the role of music in her recovery and the way that she communicates.
Yeah. Well, Gabby is a very musical person. She's someone who was in all of the high school musicals, and she sang, The Sun Will Come Out in Annie. And, so we start with that as a baseline, that here's a person who loves music. And it turns out that for all of us, music plays a very interesting role in the brain. Gabby was shot in the language center, which is in one specific part of your brain in the left hemisphere. And music resides in many different places across both hemispheres of the brain. And that is why speech pathologists use music as a way to help people who have aphasia, who have, the problems that Gabby was suffering from, to access language. And, from the very beginning, when Gabby could not really talk at all, she was starting to sing. She could barely say, my name is Gabby. She could sing, my name is Gabby. That's one of the earliest things. And then she started singing some of her favorite songs. One of the scenes that we love that Mark captured very early on is she is with her speech pathologist and another nurse, and they're singing Girls Just Want to Have Fun. And you see that it's much easier for her to sing than to, speak an entire sentence with a subject and articles and verbs, which is more complicated. But singing is something that she really can do. She loves to do, and it will continue to be an ongoing part of both her recovery and just her life. She just loves to do it. And we sang with her a lot also in the course of making this film, though you don't actually see or hear us singing in the film. It's mainly Gabby.
So if there was like a compilation album called Now That's What I Call Gabby Giffords, like what are some songs in addition to Girls Just Want to Have Fun that would be on it?
Okay, well, actually, there is now a Spotify playlist of Gabby Giffords' favorite tunes inspired by the movie and her team, so people can look that up. But yes, Girls Just Want to Have Fun. We were actually thrilled. It was just a couple days ago when Cyndi Lauper tweeted out that she had seen that clip and how thrilled she was to feel her music having that role in someone's life. Oh. Okay, so we've got the title song for our film, Won't Back Down, of Tom Petty. Gabby loves John Denver's Country Roads and can sing every verse, every chorus, and the bridge. Gabby also loves all Beatles songs. I'm trying to think if she has that if we have that so much in the film. We have the song by the Box Tops, The Letter, which she sort of randomly comes up with when her speech pathologist is trying to think of some oldies tunes to kind of lighten the mood. And the one that really meant the most to Betsy and I as sort of our filming experience was when we were in Gabby's garage as she's getting ready for a ride on her recumbent bike, which takes a bit of doing between her and a nurse to get all, sort of strapped in appropriately because the right half of her body is partially paralyzed still from the brain injury. And while she's going through that whole process, she goes for the 80s on 8 channel of Sirius XM and then starts singing U2's Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For, like with so much passion and such a lovely, tuneful voice that it was really a moving moment, I think, for us both.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. Okay, so really quick before I take too much more of your time, what is something that Gabby taught you both, and what's next for the Julie and Betsy power duo?
What did Gabby teach us? I think that it's very hard to whine about your petty little problems when you spend time hanging out with Gabby Giffords. I mean, this is a person who, by all rights, should be able to whine or complain or maybe even feel a little bitter, but she just doesn't. Mm-hmm. She really moves forward. She has a wonderful, upbeat approach to life, and I hope that a little bit of that rubbed off on me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I just say she's such a reminder of the power and importance of nonverbal communication. You often hear that the majority, I mean, I've heard people say 90% of communication is nonverbal. Never really understood what that meant until you spend time with Gabby, who knows how to communicate such big feelings with only a few words sometimes, but like between eye contact and gestures and touch and like hugs galore, like can just convey so deeply what she's feeling and connect with you that like it's pretty it's a pretty good reminder just about how we should be communicating with our whole self to people.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any shortlisted next subjects?
We are looking into a few possibilities, not surprisingly, involving groundbreaking women, but we're not quite ready to talk about what we might be doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you decide what you're going to do, you're welcome back here anytime. And I look forward to everything that you two do together. Thank you so much for your work. Thanks for making this film. And thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erin.